When Secret Level was first announced, I was super hyped. Being made by Blur Studios, the creators of Love, Death and Robots, an anthology series of stories that I absolutely loved, I was always going to check this one out. And now that it's been out for some time, and with Amazon already renewing it for a second season, I thought it'd be a fun change of pace from my regular videos. So today I'm going to rank each episode from least to most favourite. And kicking things off at number 15, Playtime Fulfillment. This episode was a bait and switch to me. I saw like a total of 4 or 5 core PlayStation properties featured in this episode where I thought they'd feature a lot more. Honestly, the whole premise was a bit boring. I mean, Kevin Hart was fine, I guess, but the whole time I'm watching, I'm just like, what is happening? And not in a holy crap, this is sick sort of way. It just didn't really do anything for me. As much as I wanted to like this one, it just felt average and memey. Like, I've heard and seen great things about Astrobot and the way they've been able to tie everything together and feed off that nostalgia, but this episode was a genuine letdown. Like, Kratos is in it for all of 2 seconds, as much as he's in the trailer really, and doesn't actually have any lines. He's just randomly there. There's no story hints or anything. It's soulless. And Jin's not even in it really. And sure, we have some nice Helldiver moments, but like, they had 12 minutes, and they made fun of cosmetics, I guess? Like, Mega Man did more with 8 minutes. Honestly, this episode should just be skipped. Number 14, Spelunky Tally. I have to be honest, I haven't played the game ever, and probably won't, and this episode didn't really change my mind. I do enjoy the art style, and think it looks great. I feel like there was meant to be an intended message about making the most out of life and how every moment could be your last, or something, but it just didn't really land that well for me. I'm not sure. I mean, it's fine, and I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it as much as I could have, I think. Then again, I've never played the game, so I'm not sure, honestly. If you decide to delve into this series, I don't think you miss too much if you skip this one, though. Number 13, Concord, Tale of the Implacable. I was probably the only person that was looking forward to this episode and expecting it to be really good. And as a result, I'm a bit let down. Like, honestly, I didn't hate it, but it's definitely not a favourite, and I'm not exactly rushing back to rewatch it. It had a decent idea of this high story, and the visuals were actually really impressive. Like, the amount of work that went into it is immense. The style and design of the characters, though, kind of falls flat in my opinion. They don't all look and feel unique enough to stand out on their own. I do think the way it ended was interesting, because I'm pretty sure this is sort of like a prequel that leads into the game, but it sort of just ends there. Overall, just a very middling episode. Pretty predictable, and I'm probably one of the few people who were really actually keen for this episode and thought this would be one of the better episodes, but I guess I was wrong. Number 12, Crossfire, Good Conflict. Okay, I really didn't mind this one. No, I wouldn't necessarily rank it very high, but honestly, I feel like it does a decent job showcasing the two sides of a conflict, and this whole thing around the characters trying to justify why they're on each side, and the whole morality piece was pretty cool. The action was also well done, and the graphics are, as always, quite impressive. I was surprised at how long this episode was, though, considering this series is, I think, aimed at Western audiences, and the game itself is much larger in the Asian markets. It's probably one of those episodes they're hoping will drive more players to check out the game, but I feel like there's just not enough to really hook people in. It's honestly not a bad episode in my opinion, but definitely doesn't stand up to the really good ones. But I guess considering it's a multiplayer shooter, they probably didn't have too much lore or source to work off. Number 11, New World, The Once and Future King. Now, this episode was a bit more surprising and was one of the few that added a decent amount of humour. Again though, I didn't hate this one, but I also don't think it stands up to the really good episodes. The visuals were super impressive, and Arnold's voice really helps to give the characters life, but it doesn't grip you like some episodes do. I will also say that the humour did start to feel a bit tired by the end, and the whole episode could have been done shorter, with more impact perhaps, and some of that time given to something else, like Mega Man. It does sort of make sense though, I guess, since New World is one of Amazon's own games, so they were always going to dedicate a good chunk of time to it. Overall, a decent episode, and one I'd recommend watching. Number 10, Pac-Man Circle. This episode came way out of left field for me. I did not expect anything like this, and I actually thought the guy in the trailer was from a different episode. I definitely recommend people check this one out, and even though it's very much a new and different take on an old IP, I think it's really cool. Like the themes and music and action in this one is just so out there that I'm honestly really impressed. Like the way the whole world is super dangerous and creepy and grotesque and strange is just super engaging. And I know there's some people out there that will absolutely love this style of story and world. And the best part is that this version of the Pac-Man story, if you can even call it a story, is that it has its own game coming. I think fans of both Metroidvanias and weird, creepy horror games will definitely be interested in this one. This episode actually makes me want to check out the new game that's coming, and I'm really not one for that style of game. Number 9. Sifu, It Takes a Life. This episode was pretty sick, and honestly, I would have loved to rank it higher, and I mean individually, it's a great ep. But there's just others that I personally liked better. Overall though, the music and sound was really cool, especially that ending music. The story was awesome, but I'd consider it pretty bare bones and basic and cliched, but it sets the whole game up really well and it delivers everything you'd expect. And the visuals, my gosh, the visuals. Between this and Arcane and Spider-Verse, I've really fallen in love with this absolutely gorgeous art style. It's just amazing. The awesome mix between 2D and 3D and that like cel shaded yet water brush style paint, it just really adds a lot of charm and personality. And even though this episode is only 10 minutes and can feel a little short, it's pretty much a fully self-contained experience and I think it's just excellent. I might actually go and play through this game and do a video on this one even though it's still pretty new. Number 8. Mega Man Start. I really love this episode. I actually wanted to rank it higher, but unfortunately it sits in 8th place because it gave me a Mega Man shade of blue balls. Without going into spoiler territory, that ending was just the worst kind out there and is right up there with the likes of The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug. Like seriously, who decided to only allocate 8 minutes to this episode when that playtime episode got a full 12? Like I've ranked a lot of episodes higher, but this franchise desperately needs more episodes now. And probably more so than any other. Or better yet, make it a full-length animated film, which I'm certain would do well as long as they give it a decent story, and it would 100% attract newer and younger gamers to their franchise. It actually just feels like a pilot episode for something that could be so much more. And as a kid who played Mega Man on NES that never understood the story, it was great to finally see that there was a reason behind why you're fighting robots and taking their powers. Like all in all, it's an awesome episode and you should definitely watch it, especially if you're a Mega Man fan. Number 7. The Outer Worlds, The Company We Keep. I actually like this one a lot. I'm honestly not even sure why, but I think the way it ends is actually really interesting. Without mentioning spoilers, the ending just didn't play out the way I expected, and I think that is what helped me enjoy it so much more. Like, you're thrown into their world without too much explanation, and even though I've not yet played the game, it does feel like there's a lot of fully fleshed out lore here, and the level of humour really adds a lot of charm and personality to the story and characters. They're also interesting and well acted, and this futuristic world where corporations have taken over seems like it could make for some interesting stories. I'll probably have people disagreeing, but I just found it to be a good episode overall. And at least it felt complete, unlike Mega Man. Number 6. Dungeons & Dragons: The Queen's Cradle. I'm not that familiar with D&D, but this was really cool. I actually really loved the most recent film Honor Among Thieves and thought this episode was a great way of expanding that world even further for those like myself that aren't too familiar. I think D&D fans are really eating well lately, similar to Warhammer, with both IPs rising in popularity and becoming more mainstream. I will say I thought the episode itself was somewhat predictable in terms of story, but that may have been partially because of the trailers. And from a lore side of things, I thought the Gold Dragons were like the strongest. My gamer brain was also thinking the whole thing felt a bit unbalanced by the end, but then again I'm not super familiar with the lore, so can only assume it was lore accurate. Like I said though, the whole story felt very cliched and had a very Hollywood style ending I think, which isn't bad, it's just very run of the mill and I mean, it works. Great episode overall, watch it. Number 5. Exodus Odyssey. This episode was a big surprise for me. I did not expect to enjoy this one as much as I did, and even though it's very interstellar-y, I love that they've addressed time dilation in general, because since I've understood it, I've definitely enjoyed most things less because like 95% of franchises just completely ignore this, so it was really refreshing. Now, being that this is a new franchise, we are still yet to see how the game's story holds up, and how the overall game is received. But after watching this episode, I'm genuinely keen to see more. It's just really interesting to me, and I'm all for companies investing in new IP. Like so often nowadays, it seems to me the bigger companies are only willing to back old IPs because they think they're safer bets, and we end up just getting remasters or remakes. Which, I mean, in itself isn't necessarily bad, but it can feel tiresome after a while when there's plenty of room for new IPs to pop up. Number 4. Honor of Kings, The Way of All Things. This episode was a surprise, and honestly I'm disappointed that it's a mobile phone based MOBA. Dota 2 is enough competitive multiplayer for me, so I'll probably never check this game out, but this episode really impressed me. I obviously can't speak to how good the actual game is, but if there was a single player game based off this world, I'd 100% be in. The Chinese influence mixed in with the technology and the almost mystical themes is just super cool. It's like a cyberpunk future that's grown out of a traditional Chinese kingdom, and it just seems so cool to me. Like, I don't think I've seen a game of Go or chess be this captivating and dramatic. Like, it actually just felt like an anime or something, and it was just so awesome. I do hope they do something with this though, and make it into its own single player game, but it's probably not going to happen. Overall, a great episode though. Number 3. Armored Core Asset Management. This entire episode was just straight up Keanu badassery from start to finish. Giant mechs fighting was always an easy sell for me, but Keanu Reeves is actually amazing and the whole concept is just super cool. Between the cores themselves and the speed and weaponry shown, it all just looks so awesome. Every scene looks like it's out of a sci-fi concept sketchbook and is so well animated. I'm obviously not familiar with the franchise, but to me it seems that there's more depth here, with Keanu being special even amongst core pilots. And the way the whole story plays out by the end is really what pushed this episode into top 3 for me, because it was definitely not what I expected. There was certainly no Hollywood-style ending, and that has me really interested. I was always planning to check out the games at some point, but this really pushes this game higher on that list. I'll just need to figure out how to fit it into that unending backlog. Number 2, Warhammer 40,000, and They Shall Know No Fear. This episode ranks second for me, and this ep was on a placeholder as second until I judged part 2. Well, part 2 came out and my top 3 hasn't changed at all. Maybe I'm biased because I've been pretty immersed in the 40k world lately, and between the time I've spent in Space Marine 2 and watching through some Warhammer shows including Hammer and Bolter, Pariah Nexus and The Tithes, and obviously Astartes, but this episode is just so good. Now, it should be noted that Syama Peterson, the original creator that made the Astartes series on YouTube, helped make this episode, which I think speaks to how accurately and authentically true to lore it is. And even though this episode is very reminiscent of the Astartes project, with a lot of similarities and parallels, I really do feel it should be recognised as its own thing. It is also a continuation of the Space Marine 2 story, again following Titus, but it also really showcases how fast and brutal the Space Marines can be. Because yes, they are walking tanks as everyone knows, but they're also actually unbelievably fast considering their size, and super smart. And the amount of painstaking detail that's in this one episode is actually astounding. I mean, I could go on about this episode for 2 hours, but the short of it is you should definitely watch it as a priority. The best part of it though is that this episode, along with the game and the Cavill Amazon project being greenlit, is that it really opens up a huge gateway to much of the mainstream media, which I think is super exciting for not only Warhammer fans, but sci-fi fans in general. Number 1, Unreal Tournament, Zan. This was by far the biggest surprise and the absolute best episode out of the entire series for me. When it comes to the original Love, Death, Robots show, I found it really hard to pick a favourite, but with Secret Level, after watching through both parts, for me this is 100% my favourite episode, hands down. It's just so awesome. Not only does it hit you so heavily with nostalgia, it's actually just a full-fledged story with actual depth and metaphors and morality, even working off your empathy and emotions. It's just a really well-made story. As an older gamer that played Unreal Tournament 2004 during my formidable years, this episode hit me so hard. From the unique characters to the sound effects, from the nostalgic announcer voice lines to the surprisingly unique weapon designs and the stages, I mean, I can still remember playing on these levels. Like, I remember sniping using the lightning gun on this stage. And the subtle gaming references like camping, this episode just knew how to hit every single fan service moment. It's honestly just an amazing episode, and now that I think back, I really have to wonder why they cancelled the last game and let this franchise die. I do have a feeling though that if this episode does well, there's a real chance they might consider bringing this franchise back, which could very well be the first game that could entice me back to using the Epic launcher. Anyway, enough rambling, that is my ranking for all 15 episodes of Secret Level Season 1. Did you agree with any of my picks? What was your favourite episode? Because I'm absolutely down to spend hours discussing this one. It actually makes me so happy that this is a thing, and I'm so excited for more. With Amazon already signing off on a second season, what game do you think would make a great episode? I really hope they do a Doom one, and maybe something for Mega Man. Oh, and I really hope they do more for Ghost of Tsushima, especially since that Playtime episode left me so disappointed. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. If you've managed to sit through this whole video, thank you so much for watching. I'm still looking to upload a brand new video once a fortnight, but be sure to let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully, I'll catch you in the next one.